Hey guys, and welcome back. In this lesson, we're going to continue with the modeling of the buildings. So let's start. And here is where we left last time. And let's go to Google Earth. And here we can see the building and the way that we are going to be doing the holes for the windows and the doors. So now let's go back to Cinema 4D. And we are going to be making a null object for each of these buildings because we are going to have some other elements in each building. So let's just select the building and using the command option G that will create a null object, and automatically it will put the elements that we have selected inside of this new null object. And sometimes it is a good idea to hide these elements that we are not going to be working with and just left visible the element that we are going to be modifying. In this case, we are going to be working with building O1. So now let's select the knife tool. The command for that tool is letter K. Okay, so now with the knife, we're going to select where it is that we want to make all these cuts to have some space for the doors and the windows. Something like that. Just make sure that we can go to the perspective mode and remember that we have to set the mode to loop on this knife tool. So whenever we make a cut, it's going to cut all around the object, and this is what we have to do now. Just select where we have to cut and just click to cut. So let's make a cut right there and another one there, and we are going to continue with this process to finish these holes for the doors and windows. Okay, that should work just fine. And I like to make a cube and just call it ruler. So I'm going to explain you why. But first let's change the color. And now this is the object that we just made. Let's try a different color. No, I don't like it. Let's go back to some red. Okay, so now let's just rename this to ruler and make sure that we have this invisible for the render. And this is going to help us to measure. It's going to be like a ruler, and it will help us to measure the distances. There's a tool called the ruler in Cinema 4D, but this is the way that I prefer to work. You can use the ruler, or you can use this uh, ruler object if you want to. Okay, so basically what I do is just take this object and see what size this element has to be, because all of the windows have to be the same size. So this is a good way to make sure that all of these elements are in fact the same size. Now what I'm doing here is just to duplicate this object and position it wherever I have to make a cut. Okay, so I'm just moving it down to see if it is aligned with the other windows and doors, and it looks like it is all good. So let's take those rulers to the top again, and now let's go back and select the building O1 object, and let's select the edge mode, and again remember to set the knife to loop, and now you can see how easy it is now to make those cuts, and we don't have to worry anymore about distances because we already measured that. So we just have to place the knife tool close to the edge of the ruler, and it will automatically stick to the edge, and whenever we press click, it's going to make a new cut, and it's going to be the exact same size as the other windows. And as I said before, Cinema 4D has a ruler tool, but this is the way I like to work. Okay, so let's just cut the last two segments, one here and one more here. And now let's see how it looks. And it looks good. So now let's go to the front view and let's start making the holes for the windows. But first, let's get rid of these rulers that we have. We don't need them anymore, so we can just delete them like so. And now let's see that all of these new polygons that we created are just on the right spot, and they look like they are okay. So now let's go ahead and select the building O1. Make sure that we are on this polygon mode, and now let's select the door, and using this extrude inner tool, we're just going to select those polygons and extrude this door. And now what I'm trying to do here is to see how deep we have to extrude this. And for that we can go ahead in Google Earth and just get closer so we can have a closer view. We can see now all of these parts of the building from a closer angle, and we can inspect and see how deep we have to make these holes for the windows. So now we have an idea. Now back in Cinema 4D, we're going to select these other two polygons, and we're going to just using again the same tool, extrude inner, we're going to make these new holes for this other door, just trying to match the image that we have in the background. And here we have these two little windows. We're going to do the same thing, just extrude a little bit. But first, let's modify these lines over here. Just move them a little bit to the left so they match the window that we have in the background. Something like that. So now let's go to the perspective view, and here we are going to select the polygons that we have at the bottom of this building, and we are going to delete them because we don't need them anymore. So just make sure that you don't have any other polygon selected, just the polygons at the bottom. Now let's go back to the front view, and here we are going to modify some of these points so they are aligned with the rest of the points. Here we can see that we have other points that we have to move around so they are in the right position. Okay, let's go back and select them all at the same time and just move them down. And now let's go to the perspective view to see how the points that are around the building have to be, and we can try to place them in another position, but I think that they are okay, so we're just going to leave them like that. And back to the front view, we're going to select again the polygon mode and select these two windows, and let's first move these points down like that. Let's just modify a little bit the other door, and here, using the extrude inner tool, we're going to do the same that we did on the other polygons, and we can see now in the perspective view that they are okay. It is always a good idea to change from different perspectives so you can see your elements and your objects in different views, and you will know exactly what it is that you are doing. So now let's go back and select this building O1, and let's check the only select visible elements, and we are going to select all of the windows for the different floors because we are going to extrude these different windows. You can see that we have to leave that one out, and let's just see how deep we have to go with these extrusions. So let's continue selecting all of the places where we are going to have the doors and the windows, and it looks like we are ready. So let's go to the perspective view, and here let's make sure that we don't have any extra polygons selected from any of the other sides of the building, and it looks like we are okay. So now let's go to the menu, select, and we're going to set selection. Click on that option, and here we are going to assign the name for this selection, and just name it window selection. And what it does is when you have a complex selection and you have to select something different, you can just select it. So now we can say that building O1 is finished at the moment. So we are going to go to the front view and we are going to start doing the same process for the second building. But first, let's go and save this document. Okay, so now that we have all of the windows selected, we are going to go to the extrude tool, and we are just going to click and drag to make this extrusion. But if we want to be more exact, more precise, we can go to these extrude options and change the offset, and we are going to use something like -3, like that. And we can see that we can modify this value. We can place another value like -20, for example, and it will just move this offset depending on the value that we have. So let's just uh, place this -3, and going back to the extrude tool, we are going to make a different extrusion, like something like 20, -20, and we can see now that we have the holes for the windows, and they are ready now. So let's go back again and make one more extrusion, -3 again. So we have these uh, different extrusions that are going to be working for our windows. So now we can check that all of the windows and the doors that we have selected have these extrusions. And now we can go back here, and we can uncheck this ruler because we don't need it at the moment. So now what we have to do here is to make some divisions to these polygons that we have here on the sides of the building and on the top of the building as well, because they are just too big. So we are going to make some divisions to these polygons, and you can use a shortcut, which is the letter V as in victory, and we are going to press letter V and select the select option and go to this ring selection, and that will select all of these edges. Of course, we have to be on the edge mode. So to cut these edges, we are going to go here on the knife tool, keep it pressed, and now we can select this edge cut tool. And we can go here to the different options, and first we are going to uncheck the create endguns option, and we are going to change the subdivision. So to see these changes better, we are going to just go to the display mode here and change the display, and we are going to the building 01 and uncheck the X-ray option so we can see this object fully, and we can see that we have one subdivision, and when we press apply we can see that subdivision. So we can change this number for the subdivisions, like for example if we press 3 we're going to have 3 different subdivisions, and we can press any number that we need, for example 10. And one more thing, like if we press 1 here and we change the offset to, for example, 10%, that is the place that we are going to have this subdivision. If we place it at 90%, we're going to have it on the other side. So we are going to change this to 3, and we are going to have the offset at 50%. So this way we can make sure that the subdivisions are the exact same size. So now let's go to the top view, and here let's go to the point mode, and using this rectangle selection make sure that you have unchecked these only select visible elements and select these points and these other points. Now go to the perspective view to make sure that all of the points are being selected. And here we are going to now to go to the scale tool, and it is important to mention this because sometimes you are going to come across this problem when you want to modify some points but you cannot. And here is one of those um, times, and you can see that I'm trying here to modify these and move them, and we just can't. You can see that, and that is because I have to go here and uncheck this enable axis modification option. Once we uncheck that, you can see that we can now just modify the points. So just make sure that if you come across this problem, you just have to uncheck this enable axis modification option, which is this kind of L shape with these two arrows. So now we have to select this again using the ring selection. We're going to select these edges here, and we are going to go back here to the edge cut. We are going to press just one at 50%, and we are going to get this result. So now we can say that building 01 is finished at the moment. So we are going to go to the front view, and we are going to start doing the same process for the second building. But first, let's go and save this document. Okay, so now let's go to the front view, and let's hide this first building, and let's make visible building 02. And the process that we're going to be doing here is basically the same as the process that we did in the first building. So let's go and select this building, and using this knife tool, make sure that it is on loop mode, and we can start working on the windows. So let's just make some cuts here to define where the windows are going to be, and we are going to do the same for the doors here on the first floor. So once we have that, we can work on the vertical cuts like that, and here on the second window here. And for this we can use again the ruler that we used on the first building, just to make sure that these elements are equal in size. So let's use this rule to measure. It looks like that is the right size, so let's just move this to the other side of the building and cut where we have to cut. It's gonna be one cut there and the second cut right there. And we can hide this ruler because we don't need it anymore. And let's make some other cuts inside of these, in the middle of these windows. For this we can go to the ring selection, and using the same tool that we used before, the cut edge tool, we're going to make a cut. So let's go and make sure that it is 50%, and that looks good. So here You can see that there is another window here on the last floor, and we are going to make that window. So again, with the knife tool, we are going to cut to make this other window. And make sure that the restrict to selection option is unchecked, otherwise it's not going to make the cut. So now let's go to the perspective view and see how this building is working out. And it looks nice. So we're going to make some other cuts here. So let's select the building and let's cut here, and let's make another cut here. Okay, and don't forget that we are working on a reference, so we are going to go to Google Earth and see this building from different perspectives, and we're going to we can see that this uh, is looking similar, so we are on the right track. So now let's go to the front view, and it looks like this the last window that we made is a little bit off center. So let's select the point and let's zoom out a little bit, and we're moving some points that we don't need to move. So let's deselect those points. Let's zoom out again, and let's make the selection again. There we go. So let's just center this other section like that, and we should be good now. Okay, so now let's go to the polygon mode, and using the live selection, we're going to check this only select visible elements option, and we're going to use the uh, extrude inner tool to make some extrusions like that. That is looking good. So now let's redo it. That looks better. So let's continue working on the other windows. And we are going to do the same thing. So let's go to the extrude inner tool and let's extrude. Now let's go to the point mode and move these points so they match the shape of this window. And before getting into making the holes for the windows, we have to go to the top floor and we have to use the knife tool and make sure that it is on the loop mode, and we're going to make that cut. We're going to cut there, and right after that we can now start selecting these windows here. So let's select them. Make sure you select all of the windows and the doors, And again, it is a good idea to see on the perspective view that we haven't selected anything that we don't need to select. And once we have the selection done, we can just go ahead and uh, continue with the extrusions. For this, we are going to make visible the first building, and remember that we had the extrusions for this building already. So we can now do the same thing. Go to the select menu and make this polygon selection, and let's just rename it window selection, and we can place some B1 and B2 for building 1 and building 2. And now we can start making these extrusions. One there, one more there, and one other right there, something like that. Let's uncheck the X-ray option, and now we can see that we have the holes for the windows and the doors. Let's make a quick render, and let's add a simple light, and let's place it in front of this building, and let's move it up a little bit. And let's go to the settings for this light, and here on the shadow section we are going to choose a shadow map, and here on the shadow panel we are going to change the shadow map to 1500. That is going to give us some soft shadows. Now let's add a floor to see this better. We're going to add a second light just to fill the scene, so the scene doesn't look too dark. And I have to mention that this is not going to be our final lighting. This is just a preview, so we can see some details on the buildings. And we do this because if we work with the default light, we will not be able to see clearly the details that we are working on these buildings. So let's just make some quick renders, and let's never forget to save the file. So let's go to File, Save, and make a quick render. We still have lots of things to learn, so I will see you on the next lesson.